what gave you the specific idea of going out and doing this on your own?
So it was this idea I kept hearing, well, there's no way you could make a living at small, medium projects in your community. Well, I'm not sure you couldn't. And I went out, and the first year I made $450,000 the first year out by myself.
Damn.
Welcome to the Level Design Podcast, a podcast for architects and engineers who want to thrive in this industry by creating more freedom, fulfillment, and financial security. Join us in uncovering how to restore value and honor to the unique people who choose to be designers and caretakers of our built world, and why it's essential to the future of our society, our industry, and our planet.
Tell us about your day yesterday in the field.
Yesterday in the field.
And beyond.
Well, there's a existing 7,000 unit HOA south in Dallas metro area, standalone HOA. This place is huge. It's like its own city. And the developer's been developing it since the 80s, I believe. Got an airport, golf courses, brilliant little community. But the developer wrote it so that they were completely in control. So he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the development, and the HOA just had to accept it. HOA had no rules, had no criteria. The county didn't care because the county's like, it's its own thing, not county roads. So there's no overwatch of the developer and his design team. Very focused on nice community, really, really good community. Things didn't work. Things are not working. Developer comes in lately and goes, I'm going to hammer out the last phase, 2,000 more homes. Now we're up to 9,000. And the HOA is like got lawsuits, flooding, drainage isn't working at all. And then they got upside down with the developer saying, hey, we want to get things right. Developer's not really listening. So they hired us.
How did they find us, by the way?
Marketing.
Just through
internet.
The website?
Google. Yeah. Google this, right?
And then you went and had a one-on-one or like face-to-face?
We entered into an ongoing contract, and after we saw it, we said, look, let's not look at the small things going wrong. Let's look at the whole picture and reevaluate, and then let's narrow in the problems. We don't understand the big picture. How can we fix the little picture? And then we can maybe potentially, with the information, influence the design team for the final phase. So the final phase isn't a repeat of problems of the past. So it's a really complex problem scenario with humans. Yeah. Humans' motivations of whatever their motivations are, and the motivations of the people that are living with the outcome of those motivations. Mm-hmm. They're not aligned, and bringing in a consulting team to somehow do better. Mm-hmm. And so that was the meeting yesterday. But
wow.
9,000 people.
9,000
families.
9,000 new homes.
Wow.
Flooding and disputes. And the problem is that the science of engineering is really not complex. It was just the unwillingness to do that for profits or more lots or, interesting decision making, right?
Humans lack empathy a lot when it comes to business.
Some do.
Yeah.
Some do. Some have too much.
That's true. Yeah.
It depends. Yeah. Depends, right? Right. Yeah. So that was my day yesterday.
Wow. How is civil from your perspective? Like, what's happening in the world of civil? And you actually told me yesterday about a particular change that might be coming down the road after the latest election results.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of engineering serves basic human services or basic needs, but especially civil when you get into basic things like water and sanitation. Mm-hmm. Civil really was born from water quality, not getting sick from drinking water. Mm-hmm. Sanitation, a lot of our wastewater, almost all of it goes back into the rivers. And then the next city downstream drinks it, right? So that civil engineering of the safety of disease is civil. And then transportation for our economy, right? So those are the basic government services around civil. So we think of it as a boring topic, but it really is the fundamental human thing that we need to do well.
Affects everyone.
It affects everyone.
If I remember my intro to engineering class well, civil was built out of military engineering, which was like the original engineering, right? Or at least in America. And then civil broke out off of that and a couple other different strands from there.
So there's a lot of opportunity in civil and, residential, smaller, medium-sized projects as well. But with this latest election, we're likely going to see a cleaning out of a lot of government, potentially, leaning out the government roles, and that also includes civil engineers, right?
Yeah. I mean, the promise of the election, a lot of it stems towards government efficiencies, right? So Elon's government efficiency, we really don't know what that means, that role, or that, I don't know what this is, this new efficiency role, but I don't know how it's going to get implemented or what their authorities are going to be. But maybe it's just an advisory group. I don't know. But that going and saying we're going to get rid of a lot of government waste, which is probably going to include employee layoffs, which is probably the wrong place. A lot of the government's waste is not in the employment of good people. But
that's a corporate illness.
Yeah.
Is looking for margins there.
Yeah. It's actually the Social Security program is where a lot of the money is going, right?
Yeah.
So Medicare, Medicaid. But we're going to lose some government engineering focuses, transportation, of course, schools. A lot of those things we're going to see. Some layoffs that putting people out, which means services won't be provided. I think society as a general in the U.S. likes their government services. So I don't think that's going to last long. So I think it's going to be, the reaction is going to be the services are wanted. We just don't want government waste. And they're going to look to the private sector to think that's more efficient. And I get it. Often it is, but often there's a profit margin in there too.
Yeah.
So it's not always cheaper.
So you think that things like DOTs and counties and stuff like that are going to kind of get leaned out and they're going to start going towards private for highway building and everything?
Yeah. I think you're going to see a lot more privatization of basic government engineering.
Do you think that makes us move with more agility or just, than the government? Everybody makes the joke that the government's slow. I think they just have a good process maybe, but what do you see the change being and, the speed of things being taken care of? Because we're deteriorating, right? We need this work done in order to continue to have convenience.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So in my public sector career, after a while in my public sector career, I actually was kind of the hitman in government. So even my last government role, I literally had the manager of the community pull me aside and say, this community's been stuck for 50 years on all of these different things. And I heard you can manifest change. I will hire you to manifest, if you can manifest and cause these things to happen, get us unstuck. But I guarantee you this, if you do that, you won't be here 5 years. They'll run you out of town. That was the offer on the table.
Jeez.
Which I would have taken.
A 5-year deal.
And I did take it. And I completed it all. And I was run out of town. Because they were angry that all these things.
It happened exactly as described.
Yeah, as described.
Wow.
So one would say is government can get stuck. I mean, if they're literally hiring, that was the offer to get us unstuck. And to know that the system will run you out. They'll get so angry that you caused it all. The things they wanted, but you took away the debate and you caused it into reality that they would be angry with you. And that's systemic in government.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That's fascinating.
Well, the big one here in Austin is 35 expansion. I feel like I'm a part of groups that are against expansion, kind of just thinking of general transportation engineering and how it works. And it's just going to set 10 years down the road, we're going to be stuck with the worst I-35 piece in Austin until it's done 10 years from now. And then it's going to need to go again. It's going to happen again by then.
Yeah. Yeah, I was literally called in after that position. I was called in by the state to be the lead state engineer. And they interviewed me and they selected me. It wasn't an open process. And they pulled me to the side. And basically the interview process was, this is a state. Transportation problems, similar. and said, literally, I understand you could actually be the person to solve the problems. And they said, what would you do regarding congestion in an inner city? And I gave them the answer, and they said, thank you very much. That's just way too radical for us.
What was the answer? A brief description.
So typical, I said the first 20 years I would condemn and purchase the toll system and make it a non-toll system.
Wow.
And make it an interstate state highway.
The exact opposite of everything happening in Texas, at least.
Right. Yeah. They didn't, they thought that's just too radical to condemn and take the.
But that connects to the privatization conversation we're having, though, right? Like, if everything comes privatized, what does that mean systemically on the other side? Maybe we do have more agility, but.
There's so many toll roads now that were to pay off the highway, but then they get so used to the income of the tolls, they're like, oh, we're just going to keep it. And so it doesn't even do the purpose of having the tolls.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it remains a profit machine. It doesn't.
Well, we pollute our air on the premise that that's an unused asset, the toll route. So we all sit in congestion and we pollute the environment. For a vehicle standing and idling, it's 1 gallon an hour. And if you run that number, you're polluting the environment unbelievably. You're destroying the planet based on a philosophy of the fee to use is too much fee, so people aren't using it. And that's one of the contributors killing our planet. Well, that's silly.
Super silly. You see it all the time, though. Like when I'm coming into Austin, I'll take the Mopac Express lane. I'm the only one in it, and it's completely backed up.
Yeah.
And I get it because I'm not commuting every day, so it's a viable expense.
Yeah, if you got to pay $3 to $5 every single day, that adds up real quick.
Yeah. But then what does it do also just for the human brain? When you could be home much more efficiently, you have that free time. Maybe people more likely to be into their jobs. There's a million other reasons why we don't want to sit in traffic.
Right.
But killing the planet right now is a pretty big one.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
Well, okay, guys. So to zoom out for a second, we're here in Austin. I want to, we're growing in Austin. We're growing in other places. I want to get to you guys and like dive into y'all's ethos and journey so far. But I want to start with you, Scott. It's not something we haven't talked about, but I want to see if there's any corners of your journey that we haven't gotten to yet. So, I know.
Any corners we haven't uncovered.
So I want to unpack like if we go back, we don't have to go back too far, but if we go back to the catalyst that led you to starting Level and trying this thing out, trying to solve these problems on your own. I mean, it was pretty much just you, right? Like right before that, what were you feeling and seeing, the barriers and challenges in your work as a civil structural engineer that led you to try this thing on your own?
Well, I guess that influencer manifestation brain of mine went to problem solving of, it became a peer group. My peer group was, and I say this a lot, not happy anymore where it used to be. Yeah. And so the inquisition in my brain was, well, what changed for me? What changed in America? It felt like the same America. The market's in a 4% growth for engineering in America and architecture. The work is growing. It's not going to go away. Why are the people in it no longer thriving?
And how did you know they weren't? Like, was it you were working with them and they were expressing this to you?
Yeah.
And
just as a group. I mean, I work with thousands of teammates putting projects together. Yeah.
Were you happy?
No. It's an interesting thing to be one of the higher thinking. It's very hard work to get your engineer, architecture, design. Very hard to get your professional status. These are all deliberate hard work things. And you can go all the way back to grade school. You took the hard math classes. And it's a lifelong journey of doing it the hard way.
Commitment.
And you get out on the other side of that and you're like, I should be doing well in the marketplace. And then when you realize that your skilled trade next to you on a job site's making more than you, and you're the one in charge of the project, or you're the designer, and you're the lowest paid one in the project, your entrepreneurial business mind goes, this is not right. What is the system that's causing this to happen? Where my other wonderful skilled trades are making more than I am, and I'm leading it, or I'm the creator of it.
Was there also a level of like you couldn't even be you couldn't do authentic engineering. I mean, I know government's a little bit different, but in the entities that you were working within and the projects, were you ever met with like, well, this is the right solution to this problem we're solving, but they didn't want to do that because, like you said earlier, it was too bold, too risky, too much, too expensive?
I found your government positions, you have a lot of power and you have a lot of autonomy on how your community will turn out. It's actually an extraordinary amount of creativity, power, and authority in those positions, which is very rewarding. I mean, you can literally say, as you go up in your authority in government, you actually get to be a little bit of a kingdom on how things turn out. And if you're smart, you can do interesting things like, okay, I can master plan this particular realm or this particular thing, being planning a city or sanitation or transportation. You can plan it. I'm going to do a master plan. Well, guess who's running the master plan? Consulting team. You are. You get to dictate the outcome. So it's very powerful and rewarding in that way.
Right.
It's its own kingdom. But you're also financially not rewarded. It's market rate. The market's X. Everybody gets paid across the country. All the governments compare market rates for engineering or architecture or director positions. And they all work very hard at staying the same. So no government's paying more for a position than any other government. So at that point, you're in this position of this role of authority and you're enjoying that and you're working for your community, very rewarding. However, your income, you can predict it down to 1% for the rest of your life. You know exactly you're going to get a 2% to 1% raise for the rest of your career. In the face of 5-7% cost of living inflation rates. And you know you're losing ground for every year that you're in those positions.
Yeah.
As a hard-earned professional expert.
As a professional expert.
Yeah.
And not to mention, your fulfillment rate, which hopefully would go up, is probably not going to go up because you're kind of being handed things and told what to do. You're a little bit of a cog, right?
The government is managed by professional managers, and they have really, really taken control of government. Your city and county managers are very smart people, and they've created their own world with the support of HR and attorneys and city and county attorneys, government attorneys supporting these things. They're protecting essentially what I call the contract of the leader. So the managers of governments are under 5-year contracts, and they've built their own protection systems to protect their contracts get renewed. And that protection system filters through human resources, which filters through your public employees. And it's essentially don't make waves. So you're all the way down to your government employees. They're really good people, but they're in bureaucracies where they can't make waves and they can't improve and they can't test things because that would look bad on a problem or something went wrong, would look bad on the manager's contract.
Right. Jeez.
So that's the systematic problem is we probably should get back to, in my opinion, to the elected official running the government, running the employees, not a manager, is systematically handcuffed.
Manager, do they have any background in specifically like engineering or anything like that, or are they just...
No, they're managers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're managers.
That's such an interesting dynamic.
Well, that's another systemic thing too, is managers becoming managers not because they want to be thoughtful leaders, but because they want more than that 1% and they've been there for a while.
They can negotiate their contracts. And I find them to be very intelligent and often but they become really about that contract.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So then what?
Well, then, half of the civil engineering work in the world is government. And, we write RFPs. Government puts out proposals for projects. Consultants compete for it. They get bigger. They're getting larger systems, going after larger projects, and they're competing. Offices are creating overseas because there's more affordable talent. I can, if I'm a large firm, 50, 60, 70,000 engineers, 10, 20% of them are overseas making $3 an hour. And that's increasing to get more competitive, to get those larger projects.
commoditized.
Yep. Well, it's fine. It all works for the bigger projects and government projects. But if you're in those systems, you're in those systems. So either you're in government and you got that lifestyle, or you're in a large consulting firm and you're very specific roles typically, or like in Peter's case, you're managing overseas talent, you're being the liaison between the American client and the overseas talent, and all good people.
Yeah.
But we've introduced a different socioeconomic lower into those systems to get more to compete.
Right.
And what's happening is, for the first time, which is the motivation I had to create this company, was for the first time in 60 years, our income civil structural has been right with inflation. It hasn't changed until the last decade is declining. And that's starting to be the upset that we're seeing in the peer group.
Yeah.
Is that. So I liken it to the country was built by small, medium firms in their communities, run by engineers and architects in their communities, because that's the only way it could get done. That's how it was in America.
Yeah, there was no internet or
you couldn't do CAD and transfer overseas to have work done. Yeah. So the CAD started getting supported by the power of the internet only 15 years ago. And that's changed the business. So we no longer we're moving away from small, medium firms in our communities run by engineers to now business people that are commoditized engineers and architects in their systems.
Yeah, they have a different focus.
Yep.
So they're driving at a completely different goal than what you're talking about is community-based engineering and architectural.
That's right. Yeah. How this country was built.
So what gave you the specific idea of going out and doing this on your own? And I want to hear specifics, like you jumping in your truck. Like, I want to hear right before you decided to do that, what gave you that idea to like run
start
ads.
knocking on doors.
Run ads and get leads and have appointments and go knock on doors and have face-to-face with these clients. I want to hear like the intricacies of that process.
Yeah. Well, it was partly because I'd done some of that work before, and I had the knowledge of small, medium, because I always was running a side business. So I knew it was possible. But everybody had said, well, you can't make a living at it because you couldn't possibly do enough of them to put food on the table. You could never, and it was interesting, this human characteristic of you cannot do anything different than the rest of us are doing, because that's foolish. I mean, how much do we hear that every single day? You can't, that's crazy.
Well, who dares wants to know that there could, if they just put themselves out there, they could create something different and better.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
So it was this idea I kept hearing, well, there's no way you could make a living at small, medium projects in your community. And I was looking at all the power of internet and all the power of marketing and all the power of CRMs, efficiencies, and then having somebody that had a multidisciplinary skill set. And I said, well, what if you put that together in a brilliant system? Could you make a living? And so I started to do that just to go, well, I'm not sure you couldn't. What if you could do 4 or 5 projects a day? What if you organized all those and marketed so you get 4 or 5 a day, small projects, and they were all within 30 minutes of each other? What if you got so many people coming in, clients coming in for small, medium, you could organize them into an efficiency? It was a fallacy. And I went out, and the first year I made, 30-year career, government, $110,000 a year, director position. Same as everybody else across the country. 110,000.
It took you
30 years.
30 years to get there.
Yeah, it stung a little bit when you said that over here.
30-year career, following the rules, following the track. And believe me, not everybody makes it to director.
Yeah, of course not.
Well, I don't want to lose sight too of how hard. I want to bring it back to that before you tell this next story. Is there's 30 years of experience, but becoming an engineer. It's one of the most remarkable things I see when I speak to the engineers, even like Peter as well. Like that P at the end of your name, that's not easy to come by.
No.
It's a lot of work.
No. If you think of the 1,000 nerdy STEM kids in junior high and then high school, all those nerdy science and technology people in those minds, and only a small percentage of them go into engineering, let's say maybe 10 out of 100 go into engineering.
Right.
and only half of them make it through the engineering program. Half of them wash out.
Well, then even a smaller percentage after you graduate, if you're not working for a firm, you're not going to get your PE.
You're not going to get your PE.
You could even be in construction and it's not going towards that.
It's not practice.
Yeah,
it's not practice. So only 20% of us after we graduate become PEs, 10-20%. So yeah, it's a rare group.
Yeah, that makes sense as I see, people that are interested in level reach out and they don't have their PE yet. And we have these conversations about what they're at. Everybody wants it. It's about finding the ability to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes total sense.
So you go from a very follow the rules kind of, I never follow the rules, by the way, but
it's a great philosophy, though. I think, personally.
Level design partners don't follow the rules.
Yeah.
Break them, man.
So putting all the systems and the philosophies of business, entrepreneurism, thinking an entrepreneur mind rather than an engineering, follow the rules mind, solving problems, solving the business, creating business solutions. I made $450,000 the first year out by myself.
Damn.
So you proved it. It does work.
Shocking.
Yeah. You're like, crap. Okay. Now I actually have to scale this.
Those are all small to medium projects.
Yeah.
How was that from a bandwidth, energy? Like, were you running around like a chicken with its head cut off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it started working, I went, okay, then it started working and I go, wow, I can actually, the mind during the driving, the mind was saying, this might be the solution to my industry. Mm-hmm. And then the mind starts working on that.
Mm-hmm.
My mind does.
I think it says a lot about who you are, that's where your mind went.
That's probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. You're like, oh, wow, all these people I've spoken to, I've collected this anecdotal data that nobody's happy in my network.
Yeah.
This applies to that.
Well, especially the mindset of not wanting to just monetize that, I mean, your story is you don't really make a dime off of everything that's going on with Level. So that just shows you didn't want to just turn it into a money machine and find a bunch of engineers and start.
Yeah, I mean, Anya, my co-founder, and I, when we call it the hot tub meetings. We were in the hot tub working on the project. So for the first year, we had like a hot tub meetings, and we would have just these all-out fights in the hot tub about business and how to do this. And she would say that we would spend the first 3 years building different business models and ending up with this situation that it was a for-profit company that had all these heartfelt missions, but in the end, the business structure was to make a profit. And we became concerned of, and I would always say, but what happens when we're gone to these people? Mm-hmm. When somebody buys it or somebody else owns the company and the structure is that wants to make money off of these folks. Isn't that
take away the opportunity that you've created.
Yeah. Yes. Isn't it the same thing?
Well, companies do all the time. They buy other companies and then
rip it away.
Overturn their whole thing.
I have probably 10 offers a week for somebody to buy the company.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't think you know what you're talking about because it's a public benefit. There is no profit. We're working for the American designer. It's not a profit thing. Mm-hmm. They go, well, we want to buy your company. I'm like, there's nothing to buy.
No, you're not touching these people.
Yeah.
This is protected.
And there's no money. Right. There's no money in buying me. So anyway, but yeah.
Looking for a new opportunity? Interested in being part of an expanding network of independent engineers and architects who are thinking differently? Level Design Partners is on a mission to create prosperity for design professionals, the industry, and the world, using innovative business systems and a culture of collaboration. We believe that traditional education and firm structures want you to be a cog in their machine, depriving you of key skills needed to thrive, thus commoditizing an entire industry in the process. Gain access to skills, tools, and systems by partnering with Level Design Partners. Learn more at leveldesignpartners.com.
What's the definition on the public benefit that Level is? What's the actual definition behind that? Like what makes it public benefit as compared to for-profit or nonprofit?
Public benefit can still be for profit. So it's basically, I liken it to, it's a company that can make money that has a public benefit purpose. And the purposes are written and pretty much impossible to change. So it's enforced by the Secretary of States of the states you're incorporated as. If you're a public benefit, they look for, are you truly doing what you said you would do to benefit the public. You said, I want to be a public benefit. Here's how I'm going to be a public benefit. Here's my written purposes, and it's enforceable.
So I guess what is the how for Level? I guess what I'm asking.
The how?
Yeah.
Meaning what?
Like, how is it public benefit? Because, I mean, to me, whenever I came in, I saw it as just another engineering role. I don't really see the difference in that as just a typical for-profit company.
Yeah. Well, it's probably the thing that's most evident in it is you are an independent. You work independently for yourself. So you get to choose the type of work, how much you'd like to make or not make, and create your own balanced life in accordance with your personal choices.
So the for benefit is really for me, for the engineers. And then, of course, also it helps out the public around us.
It's the 3 P's that I always remember is like profit, always. You have to have profit for keeping things going.
To serve.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then people. So within customers, engineers, within everyone on the team, and then the planet too. And you have to kind of abide by those rules versus if you're just a for-profit, really the only goal is to make the shareholders happy.
But to be specific, those are what you're mentioning is the missions that we have to adhere by.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And engineering, my conversation to outwardly is a reminder that what's impacting the planet the most is mostly around the realm of there's natural things that happen to the planet, natural change that happens to the planet. But there are a lot of the impacts to the planet that the planet is suffering from and other species, including ourselves, are suffering from, is this endeavor for human convenience.
Mm-hmm.
So our human convenience, our desire for human conveniences and getting more and more conveniences is delivered through the minds of the design community. The designers are the ones that deliver that human convenience. Mm-hmm. So one can say society or people want more human convenience, but they can't get there through us as designers. And so that was the opportunity for Level, I thought, was if you make that a public benefit and you started creating and manifesting and influencing that way to get to your human convenience was through a different filter of a culture of designers that were interested in doing better for the planet. And achieving the human convenience, but only through better design that wasn't through a greed model, but through a public benefit model. And that is what Level's about. And that's why our public benefit is, let's create a new filter to get to the human convenience that is not through just a money-making, greed decision-making filter, but rather something that our designers are a culture of, yeah, we can get there, but we're also going to do it well to preserve our future.
Yeah, there's so many layers of sustainability there. There's the human sustainability by making your own choices, owning your own projects, interacting with community and advocating. Yeah. And then you have the environmental impact. Yeah. To simplify, it makes me think of Siri. Whenever I think about sustainability, I think about Siri because, we all use it. Or I use it all the time. Like, hey, Siri, remind me or put this calendar invite. Every bit of that goes to a cloud, pulls energy, uses power. How many billions of people, when you think about that, it's pretty remarkable crazy. When you talk about just looking down and pulling out and like our roads, the convenience of water, the way that's changing. Yeah, we have to go through engineers and design to do
get
that.
there.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. So that was the vision of, I can help you create your own definition of success. And in Level, you can change that definition as you go through life. It doesn't even have to be the same. Mm-hmm. That we create a space for you to thrive in your own way and change in your own way and give you all of the business tools and the collaboration and the teaming to do that. At the same time, starting to build this change in culture and how we deliver human convenience.
And you're encouraged. I mean, how crazy is that? Sometimes if you work a job, let's just call it a job, government, private, you go home, you have to consider what the effects would be if you want to raise your hand in that next room and you want to challenge the thoughts or the course of action. And I think one of the most amazing things that we do to demonstrate that is we want to hear how we break it again. We want to hear how we change it. And I think that that's a strive we've all been talking about a lot, is how do we make sure we're enacting everybody that's with Level, all the independent designers. That's the one thing that excites me the most. I think, is like, how do you all, now that we have so many great minds, and Peter, thanks for being here, because you're definitely a great mind, is like, how do we start to evolve that even further and really impact the change? So
Yeah, I'd like to hear how that translates. So, get back up a little bit, Peter, and tell us, where were you before Level? And then how did you hear about it? And why did you decide to join?
Well, I mean, I kind of climbed the corporate ladder for a bit, then decided I didn't really like it, went to sales, decided I didn't like that, went back to the corporate engineering world, I guess. And then I found myself, as Scott had mentioned, managing a huge team of engineers in India. And I mean, it was great in the sense of I really enjoyed speaking with them, but my hours were crazy because I had to be up at like 3 a.m. for their hours. And then it kind of became this big mess of, especially when the pandemic happened, of trying to help my engineers out, because India was way worse than here. I don't think people really realized how bad it was. Like, they couldn't leave their homes. But then our system was set up through an office in India, and if it went down, which happened somewhat regularly, someone had to break the law and go into the office and fix it. So it became this big mental challenge that I had to like kind of overcome of, how am I supposed to help my engineers, but then also make sure we're still getting these projects done? And it really became a big nightmare for me in that sense. So I decided to quit like near the end of 2020 and was kind of just fumbling my way around what to do. I had my engineering license, which was great, but I knew I didn't want to be in that same kind of role. I didn't want to be in a box office as just an engineer doing these same calculations over and over again. And I was somewhat afraid of managing engineers because, well, I don't know that I can't check every single little thing. It was like scary to deal with. And so actually my wife found Level because I started doing a little bit of writing. Like, I wrote for a magazine, I did some other published things, and there was an ad for a content writer for Level. And I was like, oh, perfect. You need an engineering background.
I remember that ad.
yeah, same.
You need an engineering background and you got to be able to write and everything. So I actually applied for that job. And then Andrew, you and I were on a call and it never even came up.
Yeah, I never realized he applied for the content writing. I was like, engineer, we're having a great conversation.
I was afraid to raise my hand to be like, hey, I just want to write.
Well, it felt like an interview probably.
It was a good conversation and everything. And I was like, all right. I mean, I've had countless jobs where I kind of just get talked into the role that I'm doing. And that's somewhat happened, but I won't say it was for a bad thing. I've loved what I'm doing now. Like, whenever you learn engineering in college and then you go into the working world, you're not really working on small to medium jobs. Like, everything you learn in engineering school is for big commercial jobs. Like, you don't learn how to do a simple load bearing wall removal, things like that. And so getting to start jumping into those kind of projects, I loved it. I loved getting to go meet homeowners and kind of figure out what their problems are and help them find a solution, instead of it just being, oh, Monday meeting, this is the project you're working on, you got to do these things by the end of the week. And so it was a lot more freedom, which I had come to learn and love through different roles I'd had, but then also kind of more depending on myself instead of needing to check other people's work and trying to figure out how someone else does it to make sure that they're happy with my design. So I really enjoyed that. And it's funny because I have friends that are in structural engineering, civil engineering, like that are project managers, senior project managers, and they've stamped one thing and it was like a letter.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I've done at least 50 to 100 just this year. And just being able to actually use my license as compared to just being a person that has PE at the end of their name, but it doesn't really mean anything, was really cool. And that's kind of what I enjoy from it.
How did it feel the first few times you started stamping regularly?
It was scary.
Yeah.
Stressful.
I bet.
I mean, I remember my steel professor in college saying, like, you're an engineer whenever you can't go to sleep at night because you're thinking about that one calculation and was it right? And then hoping they built it in the field right. And then you just can't sleep because that one little thing is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so when you start stamping stuff, you have a lot of responsibility because it's you that's on the chopping line for that. So it actually gives you more of a push to do better, to like actually double check your work and make sure that you actually are doing it the right way, but then also economically for the client, as compared to whenever someone else is stamping it, you're just doing a small part, you're going to just do it as simply and easily as possible.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool to actually be an engineer as compared to just being a designer.
At level, you're connected to the work.
Right.
You're very connected to the work.
That seems to me, just in my experience, not an engineer, but just experience of pushing yourself into the uncomfortable. What a confidence builder.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to find this pride, and then you start digging deeper into the things that you want to, that pop out. That first hurdle's, it's got to be scary, but the reward has to be high too. Do you feel like that now?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, he mentioned the amount you can make. Like, so I started when I got out of college at $52,000 a year, which is on par with someone who's going to go be an elementary school teacher, which is crazy to me. I mean, I'm not trying to diss on teachers because it's really important, but the amount of education that you have to go through to become an engineer is substantial in comparison. And then just to see like, oh, wow, I could have just gone and gotten this other degree. And then I had a friend that was a teacher. And by the end I left my first job, we were still making the same amount. Like I didn't go up any. And so it was kind of like a situation of, oh, I'm working this hard to maybe get a bonus at the end of the year. And that bonus isn't based on my work. It's based on the overall company's
performance.
Yeah. So then switching to like the level way of doing things it actually is on me. Like if I want to go out, I've got something coming up, I've got a big vacation coming up, I need to make money now for this vacation, I can do it. I can go out there and schedule a full week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of projects to get working on. So it really opens up this world of I can be as busy or as light as I want to be.
It's wild how your mind shifts when it comes to money as an entrepreneur. So that is a journey within itself.
Well, I think that's a big part of anyone, especially young engineers coming out, is you have all your friends that are in the business world that they're making 20, 30,000 more than you, but they're not working half as hard. And you're kind of like, it's disappointing. You don't want to do that anymore. You're like, why am I going to kill myself for the next 4 years to get my PE license to get a $5,000 raise? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you lose the incentive, which is dangerous to everything we're talking about, which is the needs of the community.
Well, it's risky too. It's become risky because the mergers and acquisitions. So you work your way up into management, and those management positions are currently being lost at extraordinary rates in engineering due to acquisitions and takeovers. So larger firms are buying other firms, and the management's whack. So what used to be this wonderful thing of going up the ladder, becoming management, mentoring the youth that were coming in, and these were wonderful trajectories in our firms and partners and owners, and those things are lost now through what's happening in the business of engineering and architecture. So you find yourself getting into your 40s and 50s and actually losing your position, and you actually find yourself in trouble with, actually, I don't want to be a production engineer, or maybe I'm 10 years out of it. I'm not a production engineer anymore. I actually want management positions, and there's none to be found. And so you find yourself as this engineering career is now what used to be lifelong is all of a sudden being stunted at year 20. So now it's just this bizarre situation.
That's a tough time to pivot 20 years into a career.
Wrong. Yeah, it's horrible. Especially, this is not an easy profession.
So it used to be where you stayed with one company for as long as you could because that was the fastest way to get to those points. Now you have to promote yourself by moving to a different company, kicking out some of these other managers that are older and to like, oh, let's get someone new in. So that's kind of what the world is now, is you have to promote yourself if you want to move up or if you want to make more money. You can't just stay with your same company.
Yeah, it's systemic with all business now is promote yourself through moving. But in engineering and design, that's not, I don't think it's a good thing at all, because engineering is a learning of science. And if you're moving, you're not learning.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
It's not a great outcome for us as designers to be moving that much and not learning.
Right. You don't, as science is such the big application with you. I feel like it's a distraction to have to be doing what you're doing. That's the game that the suits and the business people play. We've got to play that game and the politics, and that's our role, right? But you should be focused on the work and learning and growing.
And that's what Level does. We work on the business side on behalf of the success of them, so they can operate without the threat of being terminated. They're independent, and we hold the business and the opportunity and the marketing, and we're in front of cutting edge marketing and business on behalf of them. That's the promise that we make in the public benefit. So they're able to learn their trade in a safe space where they can't be terminated, which is so unique in today's world. But that's our offering.
Yeah.
I just love, I always go back to a couple things, and that's like, your options are pretty limited. You're either going to do the traditional route, we've talked about that at length, or you're going to try to go do it out on your own, which is beyond hard. I mean, the things, it's stressful.
Isn't it getting worse
risky.
though? Isn't it truly getting worse? To go out on your own is almost an impossibility with the marketing.
100%.
The competition.
The marketing world is.
Yeah, it's noisy. It's
Well, the
noisy,
only
it's
chance you have in that role is if you know someone that can feed you work. Like if you don't have that, then you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
It's also like you could figure it out. Plenty of people do. I mean, you did, but it's like at what cost to, if you're, most engineers, they want to be engineers, they want to do the engineering. A lot of times they don't have maybe the social skills or acumen or
What you talking about?
well,
I think what you're getting at is it's not scalable as a single person.
No.
You know, Scott did it. He proved that where the inefficiencies were, and then he went and applied actual process to that to take it off of the entrepreneur.
exactly. That's what I was getting at, is like it frees you up so that you can start to, with the help of the collaboration, support, mentorship, which we haven't even talked about yet, I don't think, but that's like the biggest piece for me, is it gives you the room, takes off the pressure of all these little things that you don't want to have to learn. And it gives you the room to actually do the engineering, grow, be more fulfilled, be more excited. It's like this exponential thing, right? Like throughout your career, you're just getting bigger and bigger in so many ways versus like just staying the same or even retracting, which we see all over.
And and you don't have to ask anybody.
You have sovereignty.
You have sovereignty.
For sure.
Yeah. It's not for everybody. I would say that the collaborative in general, its future is really the exceptional, extraordinary designer group as a group. But the marketplace is going to love that group. The marketplace can be drawn to it. But it's actually not a lot of our technical minds, our science minds, want predictability, which I think is what you're leading to. So our minds are organized.
Yeah.
Our science minds are organized, and we like things organized. And you don't find that in entrepreneurism. So what it is it's actually a subset of engineers and architects that have a little bit different thinking. They want more for themselves. And we're not making the others wrong, because that is more typical of engineers and designers, is to have predictability, go to a shop, do your work, enjoy your others. But there is a subset that go, I want more out of my life. And so we're that space is what we're offering.
So we got to wrap up soon, but I do want to ask you, why is he here? So, Andrew.
Mr. Andrew.
Why did you?
I'm asking the same question.
Yeah.
He's the first person I talked to.
That's true. Why am I talking to you, man?
What made you bring Andrew onto the team? What does he bring to the team?
I'm questioning that myself, but well, one would say that if you're going to cause change, you would need to have extraordinary minds that approach things both differently than me, differently than you, and have a different lens on things. So I am creating a group of leadership folks that see this from a different perspective. And so the sight lines are not, so I can have a sight line from an engineer architect, and it's a very problem-solving mind. And if I think I'm going to succeed from only that lens, that I would, even in myself, I would categorize that as a fool.
Right.
So
we all have blind spots.
We have a lot of blind spots. So deliberately, Andrew is a genius mind that has a lot different lens than I do in business and he actually was coming from a system that was actually on the tail end, nearing its end of its thriving, where it dominated an industry that dominates. and crushes and strangles its society. And so he was involved in that industry, and it's nearing its end. So from experience standpoint, I thought it was brilliant to bring that person in that was in those large systems that could see that, if systems don't adapt and change to the realities, because I want that for this company too. But bottom line is it's Andrew's a catalyst in a different lens. So
I love that answer. That's great.
I resonate with that a lot, especially as I got deeper into Level, and I appreciate all the words, the kind words. It's quite interesting how similar engineering and where it's headed in healthcare. But for me, I guess the exciting part is probably what you want to hear from me. That was just such a great setup. The exciting part for me is I've always been an intentional person. So I asked myself at a young age in my career, what does that look like? And it looks to me like always learning, always observing people in all walks of life, and then applying my experience to it. And so I had to ask myself when I left healthcare and corporate America and those big systems and the things that some things were great and some things didn't turn out so well as we see now and everybody experiences. But I had to say, okay, I want to help meaningful businesses or meaningful purposes. Well, that means I have to start learning again a lot more. And what does that look like? And I have to ask myself questions. And one of the biggest things I learned is, and this is what excites me about Level, is I learned that it's really easy to give advice, but it's really hard to take your own advice. And the reason for that is that you don't have skin in the game when you're helping somebody else through something difficult or something they're trying to prosper through. And what I've learned as I work with other companies and then came into Level was community can help people overcome that fear. And so you can actually start to open your ears and try new things. And like you said, the scientific approach to making myself better in all facets, that's what excites me, because not only am I able to apply a catalyst and experience to where I see, opportunities to be more sustainable or be more agile for all the engineers that we bring in, I'm learning so much. And it proves the pudding, right? It proves that Level offers this all in its ecosphere.
Yeah.
So that's my excitement, at least. Because we work very closely together, and I always see you as you're brilliant at people. Like you come from like a CEO, you were a CEO, like you had to manage a bunch of things. You had a lot of pressure, decisions, and people. And I think you're great at like putting the right people in the right places and getting the right minds thinking about the right things to form alignment and energy to do it. Because what we're doing is it requires a lot of energy, right? It's new. We're breaking things that it's not all perfect. Like it requires everyone to have the right energy. And if they're not there, then how did they get there? And I think you're great at like orchestrating that across the board. And it's a very subtle thing. It is very subtle. That is true. I find it a great challenge, though, in Level, because how do you keep everybody unified when everybody's got their own individual goals, right? And
exactly.
That's a wild thing, but you're right, it is subtle, because you can't be more than that with people. You really can't. Yeah.
I'd say, it's possible to do this. Like as an engineer, and you kind of maybe come across Level or have an idea to be an entrepreneur, and it's scary. Like there's a lot of risk involved with it, but at least for me with Level and everything, it made it doable and honestly pretty seamless for me and relatively easy to kind of transfer into this kind of role. But like Scott had mentioned, it kind of takes a specific type of person to be able to do it, but everyone can. Like it's just being able to like get over the hurdles in your own mind of being able to talk to someone and then being able to be an engineer at the same time and know how to create a good situation both sides.
Yeah, well said. I'll say from my perspective, like I do marketing and all sorts of stuff in the business, but from a marketing lens, I would say like we don't want to talk about ourselves too much, right? Like, but it is so interesting, the problem that we're solving. And I would say to anyone listening who's like on the fence or interested, we talk to people all the time that aren't a good fit, but we have that conversation. It's very insightful for everyone involved. So like, if you're curious, try it out. It might not be a good fit, but this conversation should help, hopefully, people just think differently, because that's where it all starts. It's like, what are my options to achieve your own version of whatever success is as an engineer or architect or even other roles and professions and try something like this out, see if it's a fit. And if not, great. Like there's a lot of,
It's okay. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of change coming to this industry, which is exciting for me too.
Well, I invite anybody I'm the first one up, right? So like Peter said, if you have interest in Level and you want to know what it's about, I'd love to talk to you. I love talking to engineers. And yes, there's plenty that go, man, I'm not there yet. Or no, I like the routine. I like the safety of knowing what I'm doing every day. But it's funny, they'll go have a beer or lunch with a friend, and then next thing you know, they're on my calendar and they end up coming into Level. So it's worth talking about in your community because it is a different way of doing this. And it does impact every aspect of engineering, of your communities, and of your friend. If your friend's not happy, maybe they want to try something new and your support helps that. So, but I really love all those 30-minute one-on-ones I have regardless of what they come out as. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys.
You're welcome. Well, this is the Level Collaborative, the Level idea is born from making the American design community strong and vibrant for the challenges that are facing this country, be it global climate change or maintaining, restoring old infrastructure or old, our 200 plus million buildings that you were utilizing and repurposing them. So this is what this company is born from. And the idea was that we have to fundamentally change the business structure to cause the thriving. And that's the dream of the company as well. If we fundamentally change the structure from that we actually work for the designers for their success, the purpose of the company in a public benefit space is to work for the entrepreneurial success of the American designer. That's the structural change. They don't work for us. They're not working for our profit. We actually work for their entrepreneurial success. And the end game, the end purpose is to create that thriving American design community to match the challenges of the future in a free society. And I think America is the best place to come up with new ideas, new designs, new solutions, and to have a strong, thriving American design community that's in the space of free design is the solution to the planet in large regards. So yes, we're swimming against the tide. Yes, it's hard, but it's worth it. So
well said.
Well said.
Thanks for listening. If you found value in this episode, support us by sharing it with someone or leaving a review. In upcoming episodes, we'll discuss the realities of the industry today and what the future may look like. It's our belief that positive changes for architects and engineers is not the obligation of the industry, but rather a choice you make to reimagine how we work together. We invite you to join us in creating a world in which design professionals thrive. Learn about our mission and get involved by following us wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribing to our newsletter at leveldesignpartners.com.